I'm happy that justice is being served.
Dalton trustee Brittany Norwood responds to the recent federal subpoena issued Monday at Dalton Village Hall, requesting all payments, expense reimbursements for DUMS, and credit card expenditures for Mayor Henyard.
They're questioning the finances because that's been a real big concern of mine as a board member. We've been wondering how the money is being spent.
The FBI chief has reportedly broken his silence regarding the investigation into Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard, revealing disturbing details that have shaken the nation. His statements have raised serious concerns about the alleged corruption, abuse of power, and potentially criminal actions tied to Henyard's administration. Once seen as a bold leader committed to the community, Henyard now faces intense public scrutiny, with growing calls for accountability as federal authorities probe the web of accusations and legal issues surrounding her tenure. In a related development, Henyard faced a contentious and often hostile meeting at the annual Thornton Township gathering. As township supervisor, Henyard is no stranger to public challenges, but this meeting marked a particularly difficult evening. Board members and residents alike voiced their frustrations, with Henyard being loudly booed several times throughout the evening. At one point, Henyard remarked that it was unfair for residents to ask so many questions about the township's operations, especially since, according to her, other communities don't face the same level of scrutiny. This comment further fueled tensions in an already charged atmosphere. The comments by FBI Chief Wray were made during a press conference addressing the growing concerns about Henyard's case. While he refrained from revealing specific charges, Wray acknowledged that the investigation involves significant and disturbing potential crimes. He alluded to unethical practices and actions by Henyard, which could cross the line into criminal activity. Wray emphasized that the citizens of Dalton deserve transparency, accountability, and honest representation from their elected officials. The investigation aims to ensure that these values are upheld, as the FBI seeks to uncover the full extent of the allegations. Federal authorities have reportedly expanded their probe to include several potential crimes, including financial misconduct, fraudulent contracts, and abuse of power. According to sources familiar with the investigation, Henyard may have used her position to direct taxpayer money toward questionable projects that may have benefited her personally or her close associates. These projects allegedly bypassed proper bidding processes, raising red flags about financial mismanagement and possible corruption. Additional allegations suggest that Henyard may have exercised undue influence over local law enforcement and municipal staff, pressuring them to disregard policies and ordinances to maintain control over Dalton and eliminate any opposition. Insiders claim that senior officials and employees were mistreated or even terminated if they resisted Henyard's directives or dared to question her decisions. This has led to a growing sense of unease among both residents and local officials, who fear that the integrity of Dalton's local government is at risk. One of the primary accusations against Henyard centers on the alleged misappropriation of city funds and the awarding of fraudulent contracts. Investigators believe that significant financial resources from Dalton may have been diverted to personal interests or funneled to Henyard's associates, often with little or no benefit to the community. Several Dalton trustees have raised concerns about specific projects and initiatives that appeared to be excessively costly or left unfinished, with little evidence that the funds were used appropriately. Residents have long questioned the lack of visible progress on promised infrastructure improvements and community development programs. These projects were initially presented as key to Dalton's growth, but many residents now feel that they were nothing more than empty promises or mismanaged ventures. This growing frustration eventually caught the attention of federal authorities, who are now combing through the town's financial records and contracts to investigate Henyard's involvement in these questionable transactions. Perhaps even more troubling are allegations of bribery and blackmail involving local officials and residents. Several community members have come forward, claiming they were approached by individuals associated with Henyard's office and offered bribes or favors in exchange for leniency on certain local issues, such as permits or property assessments. Others have reported facing intimidation tactics designed to silence any criticism of Henyard or his administration. Sources close to the investigation suggest that Henyard may have used coercive tactics, threatening political and personal consequences against anyone who openly challenged her authority. Several trustees have reported that Henyard leveraged her position to gain control over key community initiatives and resources, offering political favors or penalties depending on whether officials supported or resisted her. In light of the growing tension and the gravity of the situation, the trustees have taken a firm stand. As the meeting unfolded, they expressed concern for their safety, requesting that the gathering be relocated to a larger room with multiple exits. The request came after a series of tense confrontations during the meeting and trustees' fear for their physical security given the escalating tensions. One trustee in particular has a restraining order against Keith Price, a prominent member of Henyard's team, due to Price's history of aggression and violent behavior. Price's reputation for rudeness and hostility has long been a point of contention within Dalton's local government, and many officials feel that his presence only exacerbates the already tense atmosphere. As the situation continues to spiral, the trustees are growing frustrated with Henyard's refusal to back down or compromise. Despite the mounting pressure and the unfolding investigation, Henyard appears determined to hold on to her position, unwilling to yield to public outcry or the calls for accountability. This intransigence has led many to wonder whether the conflict will lead to further legal battles. The question now is whether the ongoing dispute will result in another round of court hearings to determine the location of future meetings or to address the broader issues surrounding Henyard's leadership. With the FBI investigation intensifying and the local political climate becoming more charged by the day, it seems clear that Dalton is facing a period of unprecedented uncertainty. As the investigation continues to unfold, and with federal authorities examining every aspect of Henyard's administration, it remains to be seen whether Henyard will be able to maintain her grip on power. One thing is certain: the people of Dalton, along with the nation, are watching closely as the story develops, hoping that justice will ultimately prevail.
Making a late appearance at the Dalton Village Board meeting this evening. That meeting was being held at the Park District building since Village Hall cannot legally accommodate the crowds at a typical meeting. But Henyard tried to hold a separate board meeting at Village Hall anyway. She had to abruptly cancel it after not enough trustees were there.
A month has passed and the township is still unable to conduct business properly. There are bills that need to be paid, and the agenda is long, covering everything from approvals to proposals. The board needs to approve an employee assistance program, and the supervisor must explain her plan to provide a full 100% tax refund to homeowners in the township. While this tax refund is on the agenda for a decision, it's unclear why Henyard is still seeking approval for it, especially since it's already outlined. Additionally, there are proposals for bonuses for township employees and a forensic audit. There's a lot on the table, but progress remains stalled due to the supervisor's refusal to compromise on any of the issues. One trustee, Carlisle, has even voiced concerns about feeling unsafe in this environment. As an elected official, Carlisle was voted in by the people, and she's trying to make things work despite the challenges. However, Henyard's rigid stance and refusal to engage in any meaningful negotiation or compromise have made it difficult to move forward. The situation has become so tense that business is being held up and the township's operations are at risk. One particularly troubling issue is that the person in charge of security, Keith Price, is the very same individual against whom Trustee Carlisle has a restraining order. It's hard to understand why Carlisle should feel safe with him overseeing security. Personally, I wouldn't feel secure knowing the person I have a restraining order against is responsible for managing my safety. Price has been a constant, polarizing presence in these meetings, often in the spotlight for his aggressive behavior. There's even a well-documented incident where he screamed at Trustee Gonzalez, cursing and calling him names. Price frequently appears in areas of the village that are supposed to be restricted to employees, even though he's not employed there. This creates an atmosphere of intimidation and discomfort, particularly for anyone with a history of conflict with him. The larger issue seems to be Henyard's leadership style. She's surrounded herself with individuals who create a hostile environment, and her extreme stubbornness has made any progress nearly impossible. If she doesn't like someone or disagrees with them, she won't budge an inch. The dynamic seems to be one where Henyard is saying, "I'm here," and they're not. Even though she was aware that Trustee Gonzalez had arrived, he had already informed the clerk of his presence, but Henyard refused to acknowledge him, showing a lack of respect for other officials and the process. A pivotal moment occurred during an interaction with a critical speaker, which shed light on Henyard's approach to handling opposition. It highlighted her unwillingness to engage constructively and her tendency to push away anyone who challenges her authority. The situation has reached a point where the township's operations are at risk, and the lack of compromise is preventing any forward movement.
Tiffany Henyard now accuses village trustees of holding an illegal meeting. In court documents, Henyard, along with trustees Andrew Holmes and Stanley Brown, are suing the village clerk, 3 trustees, the village administrator, and the Dalton Park District. The
situation in Dalton Township continues to deteriorate as Mayor Tiffany Henyard's leadership is marked by growing instability and rising concerns about safety. Despite months of stalled progress and unresolved issues, Henyard has yet to address key matters, leaving bills unpaid and important decisions hanging in the balance. With a packed agenda including the approval of an employee assistance program, a proposal for a full 100% tax refund for homeowners, employee bonuses, and a forensic audit, the township is clearly facing critical issues that require immediate action. However, nothing seems to be getting done, and the root of the problem lies in Henyard's refusal to compromise or take responsibility for the tense environment she's created. Trustee Carlisle, in particular, has expressed her growing concerns about the lack of security and the volatile atmosphere surrounding meetings. While Carlisle, as an elected official, is committed to serving the people, the situation has become untenable. Her discomfort is understandable, especially considering that the person in charge of security, Keith Price, is the same individual against whom Carlisle has a restraining order. Price's involvement in the township's operations raises serious questions about safety, particularly given his history of aggression. It's difficult to understand why Henyard, who claims to be working to ensure a safe environment, would leave security in the hands of someone with such a controversial history. This situation is compounded by Henyard's consistent misinformation surrounding the township's financial surplus, which has become her go-to talking point. In different times, she's claimed the surplus is $9 million, then $4 million, then one point it was back to $4 million again. The constantly changing figures, combined with the lack of transparency, has left residents and trustees alike frustrated and confused. Henyard seems to take pride in her public statements about the surplus, but it's clear that no one, including her own administration, knows the true amount. This inconsistency has led to even more questions about her ability to manage the township's finances, especially as she continues to push for re-election and now a bid for supervisor. Henyard's inability to provide clear details on such an important issue highlights a broader pattern of mismanagement. It's clear that when a leader is fixated on a particular number or issue, especially when they're using to boost their image, it's critical to get the facts straight. If Henyard were truly focused on the township's well-being, she'd ensure that key figures, like the surplus, were clear and accurate. Instead, it seems like someone is telling her what numbers to use, but no one in the township can verify them. The constant shifting figures add to the sense that Henyard's priorities are not aligned with the transparency and accountability that Dalton residents deserve. In addition to the ongoing financial confusion, Henyard's administration is marked by a toxic work environment and escalating tensions between officials. There is a clear pattern of intimidation and hostility. Trustees who voice their concerns are met with cold stares and hostile glares from Henyard's inner circle, including Price and Kamal Woods, her close ally. This is a deliberate tactic designed to stifle opposition and assert control over the meetings. It's not just about keeping things under wraps. It's about making anyone who disagrees feel unwelcome and unsafe. And this has become the standard operating procedure in Dalton's township government, under Henyard's leadership. This environment of intimidation reached a tipping point during a recent meeting where Trustee Carlisle was speaking and a woman in the audience repeatedly interrupted her. While it's not uncommon for emotions to run high at town halls, what stood out was Henyard's response, or lack thereof. When Carlisle called out Henyard, asking why she wasn't addressing the disruptive behavior, Henyard laughed it off, dismissing the situation entirely. This moment made it painfully clear why no one feels safe in these meetings. When the person in charge of maintaining order, the mayor herself, is laughing off serious disruptions and refusing to take any action, it sends the message that dissent is not tolerated and that those in power can act with impunity. In an environment where trust and transparency are already in short supply, Henyard's dismissive attitude towards public criticism is concerning. The lack of leadership in maintaining order and ensuring safety reflects a broader problem with the township's governance. It's one thing to allow people to express their opinions, but it's another to let them be silenced by crowding or intimidation. The fact that Henyard didn't intervene when Carlisle raised a legitimate concern suggests that the mayor is more interested in protecting her allies and maintaining control than in fostering an open and safe space for discourse. The safety concerns have also been compounded by Henyard's dismissive attitude toward the logistics of the meetings themselves. At one point, Henyard mentioned there were 2 meetings a month, yet it's unclear when the last time such a meeting took place in Dalton. The township has plenty of space, so it's not an issue of physical room. The real problem is security. The trustees and residents need a meeting environment where they can feel secure enough to engage openly without fear of intimidation. Henyard's failure to address these security concerns is part of a broader pattern of neglect that's affecting the township's ability to function properly. The turning point came when Trustee Carlisle and other officials started drawing a line in the sand. They've had enough of the intimidation tactics and are ready to stand up for a real change. If things don't improve, they're prepared to walk away from the table. This is no longer just about disagreeing over issues. It's about basic safety and respect for the democratic process. The trustees have endured verbal attacks and threats, to the point where one had to file a restraining order against a township employee. This level of hostility cannot be ignored any longer. The situation is escalating, and Henyard must take action before it spirals further out of control. What's becoming clearer by the day is that Henyard's camp thrives on these negative conditions. She has surrounded herself with individuals who contribute to the toxic atmosphere and who enable her to maintain control through fear and intimidation. Instead of stepping up to resolve these issues, Henyard continues to try to shift the narrative and portray herself as someone dedicated to creating a safe environment. But the facts speak for themselves. Since Jerry Jones's departure, the township has been unable to even achieve quorum, let alone hold effective meetings. Without addressing the security risks and the escalating hostility, the township is heading toward a breaking point. The lack of clear leadership and accountability will only serve to further undermine the confidence of both officials and residents alike. At this point, Henyard must take immediate action to restore a sense of safety and order to the township. If she continues to turn a blind eye to the escalating tensions and the genuine concerns raised by her own trustees, higher authorities will likely have to step in. The situation is no longer just a matter of political disagreement. It's about ensuring the safety and well-being of everyone involved in the township's governance.